Danny, this morning, yet again, players' salaries come into focus. Martin Ziegler, chief sports reporter in the Times, £240,000 tax cut for top players. The average Premier League player's net income will rise by about £240,000 a year after the government's tax and national insurance cuts, with clubs and agents believing that the changes will make England's top flight even more attractive to overseas players. Has the government's widely criticised mini budget really just made the Premier League even more attractive to players, Danny? This is where you want to come, because this is where you get the top money.
Well, minimally.
Even more than before.
Yeah, because of the 5%, you mean. I think...
that's right. I mean,
it's fair to say the Premier League is already damn attractive. I mean, players earning 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 million pound a year. If you're talking about a difference of a couple $100,000 a week, no, I don't. I think it's an... Yes, of course.
£100,000 a year.
Pardon?
A couple $100,000 a year.
Couple $100,000 a year. Is that not what I said? Sorry.
I mean, the average Premier League player earns about £4 million a year.
Yeah, so the lads who are earning that, I don't think it makes it more or less attractive to them. They're going to come with it because of the wages already. I don't think that...
Well, one club chief executive would say, no, it does make it more attractive. He told the Times, tax can be an issue when negotiating transfers,
I understand
as players want to know their net income. So I'm sure this tax cut will make the Premier League even more attractive.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's a selling point is a selling point.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting statistic. How about the fact that that last year the Inland Revenue were investigating 329 footballers for tax avoidance? It's already in their mindsets about how they deal with tax and how they plan for their taxes. A lot of these players are already doing image rights deals. A lot of these players, highfalutin players that campaign for social causes, pay themselves through very different mechanisms that negate tax. So the structuring of tax from these players and these high-end individuals that are what we consider in society high net worths are already structured, are already have tax efficiencies, are already in a position where there is an argument that there is a scenario. If you've got 329 professional footballers last year under investigation from the HMRC, there is already a cynical attitude towards tax. Look, the government's policy and the optics of it are appalling to some extent because it damages it and gives a narrative of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. We all know that the top 1% in this country pay the bulk of the tax in this country, and we all know that the revenue collection above in that tax bracket is very small in comparison to the revenue collection overall. But like you say, the framing of this question is, does it give a situation where there's a potential selling point, and you would use it in an argument, you would use it in a debate, you would use it in, because half the time they don't really know what they're talking about, so you'd say actually there's a 5% tax saving in this country, you'd sell it as a value added. But given, I can promise you, given the structuring of these footballers now already factors in offshore overseas rights, already has 329 of them being investigated for tax avoidance schemes. Tax is already part of the fabric of what these footballers think they have to pay or not have to pay.
Well, you presumably, if you're at the top of a club and you're trying to get a player into your club, Simon, you would use this, you position it as a positive.
Yeah, of course you would.
Not at the levels that you would to a degree, but not at the levels this is talking about. If you're talking about over £4 million a year, a deal's not going to fall down on 200.
Well, what does it mean? I mean, Kieran Maguire, football finance author, he calculates the tax cut will give Cristiano Ronaldo an extra net income of 1.3 million annually on his 400 grand a week salary at Manchester United.
It's a selling point, yes, because that's the question. From a football, I remember going from, I think the minimum I paid when I was playing football was 40 and the maximum it was 50. Went up to 50 for a few years. Yeah. And I have to be honest, either way, didn't matter in terms of, because you're earning, I mean, I wasn't earning these numbers, of course, but it was still a great amount of money. The lads up there, they're not going to be losing sleep by 5%.
But the structuring and the sophistication of football and those that are around footballers
now
is far more significant because of the consistent level of money that's available to a Premier League football. Not the exception, the consistent. We are sitting here today and saying the average footballer earns £4 million a year. Now,
that used to be the top.
75 grand a week.
Yeah, as overinflated as that is, that tells you that somewhere in the region of 800, 900, maybe slightly more Premier League footballers are earning an average of £4 million a year, which puts them into a high net worth individual category. So you'll be surrounded by the locusts of agents that will be putting them into various structuring schemes. And that is why things like the HMRC are investigating 329 footballers about their tax planning and their tax positioning. And that is why highfalutin footballers are using mechanisms like company directors' loans to draw salary out, which negates tax. So the structuring is there. But to go to your point, of course, if you are an agent that wants a player to transfer to a club because that club has already suggested to you that they're going to take care of you, and the player has a mixed mindset about it, then the agent and the club will be able to talk about the benefit of a reduced taxation system against other parts of Europe.
Yeah.
Of course they will.
But when you're always screaming, Simon, for a salary cap on wages for top players, the cut of the highest rate of tax...
How about we take the wages down by 5%?
From 45% to 40%, as well as national insurance changes, makes such a significant difference to the players that they're even wealthier as a result of this. And this is a Tory budget. So that must go right against your grain, what your friend in number 11 Downing Street has done.
No, of course not. What I want is economic growth. And if you stimulate economies by enabling people to want to invest in them because they've got more money to spend, people spend more money.
Yeah, but hang on. Already very wealthy footballers have just become wealthier.
So here's my thought.
And that goes against your grain.
Well, no, not necessarily. I want wealthy people to be successful and I want to spend in the economy that they're in. And I want everyone to be successsul. But the point is this.
Well, they've done nothing to get it.
Well, they have. They've cut the income tax from 20
No, the Chancellor's given them it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can debate the mechanics of the economics, or we can talk about the football specific, and we can say, how about players can now take a 5% pay cut? Or by the alternative logic and be in the same position. Football could reset itself with a 5% wage cut, because that's my argument. But it won't. It won't do that. It'll take no situation regarding that, and neither would you expect it to.
Yeah, but hang on. We'd be using a tax cut to fund a wage cut. That's not really the way to do it, is it?
You asked me my position on the fact that I've constantly bang on about player salaries.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you could suggest that players that aren't of the mindset that they particularly need to be benefited from it, because they're all socially motivated. That's why there's 329 of them being investigated for tax avoidance. And here we are now talking about an opportunity for football to find itself in a better position and say to players, we can actually reduce your salaries by 5%, and you'll be in no worse position. Or actually 2.5%, because you're only getting taxed at 45% of the entire salary that you earn. So with that in mind, down to 40, with that in mind, you could find football doing a reset. Now, that would be some idealistic utopian Narnia land that sometimes you live in. In the real world, what would happen is that it would make no difference, and the players will just have the benefit of being a high earner that, by the way, already pays a massive tax contribution because they're already paying 40% of their salary en masse as an average. At 45%, the average player would have been paying 43% of his salary.
On a gigantic wage.
Well, the gigantic wages are what they are. If we're happy with the gigantic wages, which, by the way, I'm not, that is what it is. But the bottom line is there is an argument which you're advancing, and it's a discussion point. The average Premier League footballer has an incentive now that potentially draws him to England because he's £250,000 a year richer as a result of the tax structuring that they brought in for next April.
It's just ironic that it comes at a time that some EFL clubs are moving the kick-off times, as we discussed yesterday with David Sharp from Mansfield, to negate paying floodlight.
It is ironic. I mean, this ain't a Premier League issue, is it? Government have done
And
this.
by the way, there's some League One football clubs like Salford that take players out of Scottish football and pay them £5,000 a week, and they will be the beneficiaries of this too.
Like
so
Wrexham.
it isn't just simply the top end clubs. It's anybody that earns over 150k, and that means probably about 75% of the football pyramid has benefited from that.
Okay, the mini budget. Coming up to 11:20.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.